Hey there, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. Before the video starts, I want to let you know that if you like it, to leave a like and a comment down below. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel and click the little bell icon to be up to date with my latest content, as well as joining the notification squad or wolfification squad like this pack legend here. Thanks for your support, and enjoy the video. Starver Curse. Feed the Soul. Chapter 11. Surrendering. Swiftly swaying on dark, two-toed hooves and 8 white claws, the Wendigo's keen, eager eyes followed the resolute prey slowly descend to his level, carrying his meat-filled bucket a third time down the creaking, stilted stairs. The beast licked underneath his slavering muzzle flaps and teeth, all the way to his snout. The hauling woman scoffed gruffly as she returned to her previous spot of several meters away, as always. She had stopped wearing the earplugs. Ever since her sneaky, crazy-ass cat slinked down the cellar, Summer wanted to be on high alert for any more mishaps. Thus, her hearing was especially grateful that Ben had reduced his impatient howls and strident shrieks. There was the resounding roar of his demand, of course, but at least his deafening bestial noise wasn't as consistent as it had been. Summer figured it was probably from the combination of adapting and expecting to be fed, and not wanting to tear up his throat from all the wailing. Hell, the Wendigo probably had triple the amount of vocal cords with the creepy mimicry. Carefully putting the pail down at her feet, Summer exhaled with relief that her strained back was no longer akin to overly pulled taffy. Yes, Ben, I've got your memo engraved on my throbbing skull, she muttered with eyelids screwed tightly, waiting for the internal ringing to wane off. With a raring snarl, the pulling beast extended a shackled, lengthy arm as much as it would stretch for the unreachable, resolute prey. Not wishing to redo the same trick to bring the stew to him, Summer had to rethink of another way without getting her hand ripped clean off in the process. The beast's hungry sights only considered her when she held the scent-emanating bucket, so, perchance, he was just focused on consuming the cooked human flesh that didn't make him develop tormenting growth spurts. Despite the beast's main motivation for the odd, human foe cuisine, Summer did not trust him as far as she could toss food at him. It was the equivalent of feeding a capricious crocodile. Yes, a huge predatory reptile can learn to accept food from its handler, but the handler sure as hell doesn't put a hand in its mouth with the raw chicken! The shade of the woman's hair may be light, but her voice did not carry an Australian accent. Summer ruffled the back of her curls. She really and truly had thought that over 200 pounds of protein would be sufficient. And evidently it was not. After another couple minutes of temple tapping, the woman conjured up some possible distractions. She pretended to pull out a gravy-coated chunk and held it in her fist. Then she mocked a throw across the near-empty room to see if the beast would attempt to search for the made-up morsel. Without a single jerk of its head, the Wendigo squinted his eyelids and blew a querulous snort. He didn't buy it. The tense woman's shoulders jerked stiffly. Just as well. That would have seemed too easy for her liking anyway. With a muled sigh, she bent over and plopped her hand in once more, which prompted Ben to peer into his much chewed and practically destroyed original red cylinder. He growled as he loudly hit the rims of the bucket with his claw tips expectantly. With a crooked frown, the woman shook her head. Fast-learning smartass. Summer glanced down at one of Ben's unnaturally long middle fingers. The scratch that Posey had induced was fully healed. Even its outline was completely gone. And a fast healer, too. This time, however, Summer wasn't going to toss the food into the pail. On the top of the stew was a never-used plastic picnic salad bowl, in which she freed from out of the top of the warm concoction. The beast crouched lower into a dark and pale motionless ball as Summer brought the filled bowl of steaming soy meat and potatoes to the other side, nippily resting it on the floor. Although still inaccessible, the woman's self-perseverance kicked in, and she bolted back when the cryptid instantly sprung for it with a short shrill. Summer patted the top of her heaving breasts a few times. Jesus fucking Christ. She will never get used to a Wendigo's wrath. As she stepped out of her rubber-trimmed slippers, the corner of her vision spied Ben in anxious odious, lengthening as much as his confined front appendages could muster. Summer slowly shook her head. Of course, the grumbling beast wanted it all. And of course, she was planning on it. So while he was occupied, the hushed woman began her usual pail drop. Summer caught the suddenly silent Wendigo leering over his skeletal withers at her direction, with an icy glare that could freeze the sun. He knew. He fucking knew. With an outspoken gasp, the sensation of sleet in her bloodstream, Summer released the handle, jolting rearwards as if she was yanked from behind, and fell backwards as the perspicacious beast made a beeline to both edible sources. Since she was able to evade Ben's talons, he immediately started devouring the stew after he snatched it, before the bucket toppled over with his muzzle plunging in with gusto. The fallen woman blinked in dazed hurt and aggravation. Mendacious motherfucker, she mumbled breathlessly to the immoral beast as he ate. You still wanna add me to your fucking bucket list? No, you don't say. Can it? Griped Summer to her inner, snarky self. Bruises along her tailbone aside, the woman was none the worse for wear. However, if this was her first try at feeding the Wendigo, she would have been dissevered into an impalpable puddle. It wasn't that Summer was becoming quicker, but on the account that Ben was becoming slower. Though his mind and reaction stayed fast as grease lightning, his newfound growing girth was lumbering his mobility. Summer stared back at Ben's pitch-black wolfish profile, being engulfed in the brown stew, with the base of his jutting antlers pushing in the bucket's top rim. Nevertheless, his appeasing appetite was far from slackening, and this elicited a dissatisfied sigh from the woman. Holy Mother Mary, when will enough be enough? Sore and awkwardly, Summer shambled upright. When she raised a leg to put on her slipper, she quickly flinched from a stabbing kink in the small of her back, triggering the woman to compress her palms to the pain. Sucking through clenched teeth, she resumed the task of returning her footwear to keep her overworked leg steady while she traveled to and from the stairs. Another pang during the second slipper. Christ, this shit was getting to be too much. Summer had premeditated this for so long, and had constantly visualized her wanted outcome, of which she told herself she'd surely be promised within time. But how much time would this feeding frenzy go on for? Ben's rounded abdomen was distending more widespread after every session of giant gulps amid the brief breathing breaks. His insipid, yellowish skin was already taut as it was, and Summer prayed to God that his gut wouldn't tear from the massive pressure his stomach was taking in. Through small nostrils, the woman respired deeply. He couldn't possibly take in any more after this. As Summer pondered about her cryptid husband's unlimited crazed cravings, he abruptly stopped feasting. The unexpectedly encouraged woman took notice that the contents of the pail were not even halfway consumed. Was this it? Was he finally finished? It was then that the Wendigo started opening and closing his muzzle, making a harsh gargle sound as tense claws clasped onto his contracting trachea. Gawping vacuous eyes appeared bigger from contracted dark red pupils that weren't blinking. Summer's high hopes had plummeted into pure dread. Her fair face matched the white of her gaping scleras. He's finished, all right. He's fucking choking. Ben? With another winded wheeze and trembling arms and legs, the beast buckled to the concrete. "Benny!" Summer's heated heart pumped her body to rush to his aid, but she froze just out of grabbing distance. After the recent lunge attempt, she had to be sure this was not another ruse. In a torn combination of fight or flight, the former widow regarded her collapsed beloved lying limply on his side, croaking out huffed groans from urgently trying to draw in life-giving air. This sight alone made the woman drop to her knees, clutching the back of her head with tight fingernails digging into her scalp. "Oh God, Benny, baby, please, tell me this isn't another trick, and you're really choking." The stagnant beast's tongue lolled out as albino eyes rolled up in his head. "I'll take that as a yes." Before she even realized it, Summer had hunkered down right beside Ben and was throwing her battered winter coat with her sheathed stun gun aside, revealing her left ripped sweater sleeve. "You're really gonna do this? He'll die if I don't. I'm all he's got. He's all I've got. It's suicide. You're insane, you march hard. Last fucking time, brain. Shut up!" Hastily, Summer shifted and unhooked her right thumb out and pushed her sleeve towards her shoulder. She couldn't risk the knitted orange wear getting caught by serrated white teeth. Squatting on knees and elbows, face to face with the unconscious cryptid, the woman grabbed onto the partly open muzzle, and for the first time since she had brought him home, Summer was touching Ben. Disregarding her inharmonious psyche and the sour musk of Ben's hide, her thin digits tentatively fastened behind the large double pair of canine fangs as she spread both jaws to their limit. Then, just like her past simile that the once fully precautious woman was so against, the handler's arm dove straight into the croc's tooth-surrounding maw. Grunting, Summer pushed in as far as she could in the dark esophagus, while frantic fingers felt within the gluttonous lining for anything that seemed obscurative. The frenetic woman glanced at the non-responsive being right in front of her. At this point, she was desperate for any reaction from him, regardless of her outcome. "Ben, don't you dare surrender." She breathed out with worry hitches, maneuvering her searching submerged hand. "You hear me, baby? Don't let go. I never have." Inhaling faster as if she was taking in oxygen for the both of them, the tall woman rotated her long, bare arm back and forth, then pressed forward until only her bulky, clothed shoulder was visible. Her wide amber orbs finally blinked when her hand collided with a hard object that was horizontally wedged. Summer rapidly latched on, adjusted, and pulled. The woman stumbled back and fell onto her sore end again. Gasping and grunting, she shuffled back to her spot, shaking, standing up, and worriedly waited. After 10 agonizing moments of distressing over how to perform oxygen administration on a pointy-faced cryptid, Ben gasped in a lungful of air, and so did Summer. Adrenaline was shooting in both of her veins and arteries like rapids from an Amazon rainstorm. With concerned optimism, she watched as the Wendigo slowly returned to a quadrupedal stance as his chest movements became calmly consistent. Shaking off the near-death experience, he sat behind the seized bucket, albeit a bit cautious. The beast's protracted tongue rummaged through all the mixture to make certain that there were no more small femurs in the way of his glorious buffet. He grumbled before recommencing his gluttony. "Son of a bitch," lisped Summer. Even though the woman was utterly relieved, she was aching all over. Before she could fully discern the hell-damp item that had blocked Ben's windpipe, fear flashed over her soft features from the stinging sensation crawling on the top of her ichor-coated right limb. The scared woman locked a free hand onto her mouth, ogling intently at the ingesting Wendigo. His large, furry ears rotated forward for half a second, but opportunely, his olfactory was occupied with being immersed into the bucket's flavorsome contents. Hissing cuttingly under nervous breaths, and putting the object into her gray yoga denim's back pocket, Summer hastily backed away to the right, bottom corner of the basement, where her old concealed love seat resided. Her hindsight was amazed that the taser didn't fry its thin blanket to a crisp. She bent down, tore a strap of the tattered sheet, and got up quickly to address her sore arm. The woman was so absorbed on her choking, cursed husband, she right out surrendered her own safety. During the yanking out of Ben's health hazard, one of his many gutting incisors had pierced under her forearm. It was a fine scratch, so the skin didn't start bleeding until Summer was safely away from Ben. She had already erudite that she couldn't become what Ben was by an injury caused by him. The curse of the Wendigo didn't affect people in that way. Just like the first time when Ben's claws had ripped through the woman's closed arm, her worry was not just for her security, but for his as well. But if he recognized any of her life essence, the mere taste or smell of a drop could ruin everything. God fucking forbid it pressed the plaguing spirit of what was really being consumed. Summer would attend to the wound properly upstairs, but for now, she was reassured that she was able to dress it without any worried specks on the concrete or droplets on the stairwell for the cryptid's acute senses to pick up on. Once the wrap appeared tenable, Summer pulled down her sweater sleeve and her thumb through its designed hole. After that, she put her hand behind her back, and when she took a better view at what was under her nose, the exasperated woman wanted to punch herself square in the jaw. A tablespoon. A fucking tablespoon had almost killed her suffering significant other. It had to be the same damn utensil that she was using to eat the damn stew. Because of the Wendigo versus Nosy Posy scare, she'd forgotten that she had dropped it in the bowl and must have poured it along with the rest of the food into the bucket. But as stupid of a mistake it had been, at least Summer wasn't imprudent to use silverware. The woman was disrupted from her thoughts when Ben let out a loud gruff. She looked at him as he impassively returned her stare for nearly 5 seconds. In spite of having 2/3 of his meal left, the gravy-faced Wendigo had paused eating to glance at her before continuing. Knitting her eyebrows, Summer slightly slanted her head. Was that an actual sign of recognition that she saved his life? Or was it just a forewarning to not leave any more metal bones in his meat? Summer shrugged it off. She was too drained, sore, and cut up from the ordeal to dwell on the enigmatic cryptid's tainted cognizance. As she regarded the Wendigo's extensively sharp face inclining in his bucket, she idly recalled a story from an Aesop fabled book she used to read to Autumn, The Wolf and the Crane. It told about a wolf with a bone caught in his throat. He pleaded a reward to anyone who would remove it. A crane came forth and put her narrow beak into the wolf's open maw and pulled out the pesky bone. When the tall bird asked for her reward, the wolf bared his teeth. She had gotten to keep her head. That was the reward. The moral of the fable was not to expect gratitude from the wicked. Returning the rubbed dry spoon to her back pocket, Summer wriggled all of her fingers and decided that keeping her arm was a good enough repayment for her. She went to the right top corner and grabbed her fallen, broken broom's former accompanied pan that was next to the folded patio lounger. As Ben fed, Summer crept to the salad bowl and, like a sneaky version of air hockey, gingerly gave it a push. With a slight rasp sound, a light and smooth basin slid forward, and the gobbling beast's perceptive ears flicked again. Then 4 claws snagged the moving bowl, pulling it closer without lifting his food-hidden head. A forward line slowly formed upon the woman's lips, for Ben didn't command his bold, single order, nor did he attempt another pounce. He just accepted the large dollop of the meal that she allowed him to finally obtain. Quietly retracing steps to her thrown coat, Summer folded it over an arm and headed for the stairs. Summer paused near the top while thinking about Ben's glance. After she had dislodged the tablespoon, She was well aware that Wendigos were not obsequious creatures and should be barely trusted with a minuscule grain of salt. Nevertheless, whether he was shooting her a caveat or just being precautious was irrelevant, because the wolf had thanked the crane. "You're welcome," she whispered under a rare, soft smile. And with that, the woman left the gorging beast to revel in greedy seclusion.